We continue now at the top of Daf Mem Beis Amud Aleph in Meseches Sukkah. This is Sukkah Daf 42a. Abaye is saying on Rabbi Yossi's opinion in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yossi said that if a person makes a mistake in a Dvar Mitzvah, in this case the first day of Sukkot falls out on Shabbos, and he makes a mistake, he's trying to do the Mitzvah of Lulav, he accidentally carries it in Rosh Hashanah. So Rabbi Yossi says he doesn't need to bring a carbon, Tav Dvar Mitzvah, you don't need to bring a carbon. So Abaye says on that statement of Rabbi Yossi, Lo Shano Ela Shelo Yatzabo. Rabbi Yossi only says you're patur in a situation where you were not yet Yotzei, you had not yet fulfilled the Mitzvah of Lulav. But if you already fulfilled the mitzvah, so then you are chayav a carbon because you're no longer tabid dvar mitzvah. The mitzvah is already over. As Rashi over here says, "Lo shanu depater el shelo yotzi de chovas netila kodem shotzio." He wasn't yet yotze. He didn't fulfill the mitzvah of netilas lulav before he took it out into Rosh Hashanah. The hashta tard b'mitzvah v'tabid dvar mitzvah. That's called being busy with the mitzvah and making a mistake doing the mitzvah. Avol yotzebo kodem shotzio. But if the person already fulfilled the mitzvah before he went and carried the lulav in Rosh Hashanah, sulo tabid dvar mitzvah. That's not called tabid dvar mitzvah. V'lo tard mehashta b'mitzvah laso. So he's not trying to do a mitzvah. He already did the mitzvah. So therefore, in such a situation, Abaye says, Rabbi Yossi would agree the person is chayiv. So the Gemara says, what are you talking about? Don't you fulfill a mitzvah the moment you lift it up? You're always going to have fulfilled the mitzvah before you carry it out. As Rashi over here says, and Amar Abaye kishahavchu. So Abaye is going to answer, Amar Abaye kishahavchu. Abaye answers, the case is no, he picked it up upside down. Rashi explains, Hachi kashale. Here's the question of the Gemara. Hechi dami lo yatzaba. How do you ever have a case where you're carrying it in Rosh Hashanah, but you haven't yet fulfilled the mitzvah? Halo hotzio, and he hasn't. Halo hotzio l'kenig. You can't carry it without lifting it up. Umidag be nafik be. The moment you lift it up, you're yotzei. Nafik be de chovas lekicha is yotzei the mitzvah. Vekatani pater. So Amar Abaye. So Abaye answers kishahavcho. He turns it upside down. Kishigbiu hafach elyon lamata v'eged lamala. The binding is on the top. The top is on the bottom. And we're going to say later on that you really only fulfill the mitzvah when you hold it in the same way that it grows. If you do it upside down, you don't fulfill the mitzvah. So this is a situation where you haven't yet fulfilled the mitzvah, but you could be carrying it in Rosh Hashanah. Rav says, I can even come up with a scenario where he didn't turn it upside down. Very simple. He took it out and he's carrying it inside a kli. It's inside a vessel. So if it's in a vessel, you're not going to fulfill the mitzvah, but you're still going to be carrying it in Rosh Hashanah. But the Gemara says, 1 second, but didn't Rava say earlier, Rava said, that if you take the lulav and the esrog using something else, it doesn't have to be a direct contact. Even if you take it, let's say, with a towel around it or something like that, that's still called lekicha. So here also, you fulfill the mitzvah even though you're taking it in a vessel. So the Gemara says, no, that's not really what he meant. Hani mili derech kavod. When he said that you fulfill the mitzvah like davar acher, that would be, again, if you took like a towel or a handkerchief and you wrapped it around, that's a derech kavod. That's a nice way to take it. Avol derech bizayin lo, but to carry around the lulav like in a plate or something like that in some kind of vessel, that's already a derech bizayin. That's a disgraceful way. Everybody would agree that does not fulfill the mitzvah. That could be a scenario where you're carrying in order to be chayiv for carrying on Shabbos, but you haven't yet fulfilled the mitzvah. And the Gemara continues. Amar Rav Huna says, Omer Hoyer Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi would say, the same Rabbi Yossi that said in our Mishnah, that if you're Torah b'dvar mitzvah, then you're pater if you, by mistake, you do something that's normally chayav a carbon. Rabbi Yossi would say, Ola sa'of shenimtza ben agafayim. If you have a bird carbon ola, and it's found among the other birds, uchesavar chatas sa'ofi, and the person thinks that this is actually a carbon chatas. And the Kohen, and normally a Kohen is supposed to eat a chadasof, so the Kohen eats this bird when it's really an olasof. It's not supposed to be eaten. So he's pater from a carbon me'ila, because again, it's the same idea. It's tabid dvar mitzvah. He thought he was doing the mitzvah eating a chadasof, and it ends up it's an olasof, so he doesn't have to bring a carbon me'ila if he made a mistake in a dvar mitzvah. So the Gemara says, "My kamashmalan." Well, what exactly is Rav Huna teaching us? The tabid dvar mitzvah pater, that someone who's tabid dvar mitzvah is pater. Hainoach, it's identical. That's exactly what we just said. Why is he even adding this case? So the Gemara says, no, he is teaching us a chiddush. Ma'u detema, what might you have said? Hasam hu tabid dvar mitzvah pater hainu davar mitzvah. When does Rabbi Yossi say that if you make a mistake in a mitzvah, you're pater? That's only if you actually fulfilled the mitzvah. So in other words, he carried the lulav, he took the lulav, he did the mitzvah of lulav, and he also did an aveira of carrying on Shabbos. So you tabid dvar mitzvah and you did a mitzvah, then you're pater from the carbon. But over here in this case of the carbon, the tabid dvar mitzvah v'lo avin mitzvah. He was trying to do a mitzvah eating a chadasof, but he didn't end up doing any mitzvah. He ended up eating an olasof. So emalos, I might say over there, you don't say this exemption, and maybe he does have to bring a carbon me'ila. So kamashmal, and that's where Rav Huna is teaching us that even when you're tabid dvar mitzvah and you don't actually do a mitzvah, still, because you were trying to do a mitzvah, you are pater from the carbon. Gemara says, Meisvei, we have a question from the following. Rabbi Yossi Omer, it says that Rabbi Yossi says, same Rabbi Yossi, let's say somebody shechs a carbon tamid, but it wasn't inspected properly, so it turned out it had a blemish. So you thought you were doing a mitzvah, but it turned out you shechted an animal that was not kosher for the carbon. So you're chayev chatas, he's chayev a carbon chatas, but tzarech tamid acher, and he has to bring a different carbon tamid. Now in this case, he was tamid dvar mitzvah, and he did not do a mitzvah, and apparently you're chayev chatas, exactly the opposite of what Rav Huna said. So Amar Lei, so he said to him, Bar mina dahi. There's an exception in that case. Itmar Allah, because it was stated on that particular brisa, on that particular teaching of Rabbi Yossi. Amar Rav Shmuel bar Chitoi, Amar Rav Hamnuna Saba, Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Ashi, and Amar Rav Huna Amar Rav. So Rav Shmuel bar Chitoi said in the name of Rav Hamnuna Saba, in the name of Rav Yitzchak bar Ashi, and in the name of Rav Huna, in the name of Rav, that case was Kigon, for example, Sheiviu milishka she'enam mevukared. The case over there was he actually brought the animal from the chamber where all the animals were not inspected. And Rashi over explains that's something that for sure that wouldn't even be considered tamid dvar mitzvah. Milishka she'enam mevukared de'enza tamid dvar mitzvah. That's not making a mistake in a mitzvah. If you take an animal from a whole set of animals, none of them have been inspected. Shebetulaim shebelishka zu eino tarid. No one's even busy with this chamber. She'enon omdim la'akrava. No one is taking animals from here for karbanos. Lios char aleim masay akriva. That people are sitting there worrying, when should I bring it? This is almost amazing that the person was so irresponsible to bring it from the wrong area totally. The person's not even checking which chamber he's bringing from. If you make such a large mistake like that, it's already like amazing. That's not called tab, it's var mitzvah. So that's why in that particular case, the person's chayev achatos. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Mekabelas isha miyad beno miyad bala. A woman is allowed to take the lulav from her son or from her husband, talking about on Shabbos, and do the mitzvah. Umachziraso l'mayim b'Shabbos. And then on Shabbos also, you can take that lulav and put it back into water in order that it shouldn't wilt. You can do that on Shabbos as well. Rabbi Yehuda says, b'Shabbos machzirin. On Shabbos you can return it to the water. B'Yom Tov mosifin. On Yom Tov you can even add water. Uvemoed, and when it comes to cholamoid machlifin, you can even switch out the water, have totally fresh water. And the Mishnah finishes, Katan hayodeya l'naneya chayev b'lulav. If a katan who knows how to shake lulav, once he knows how to shake lulav, he's chayev in lulav. That's part of the mitzvah of chinuch. And so the Gemara says, Pshit, it's obvious. Why would the woman not be able to take the lulav from her husband and be yotze the mitzvah? So the Gemara says, no, what might you have thought? Since a woman is not really chayiv, this is a mitzvah, she can do the mitzvah, but she's not obligated in the mitzvah. So therefore I might have thought, maybe she shouldn't receive it at all on Shabbos. Because on Shabbos for her, maybe it's already muksa, because it's not a mitzvah that she's obligated in. Kamash Malona comes to teach us that is not, in fact, the problem. As Rashi over here says, maybe when it comes to her, so that's already Isser Tiltal, because it's not a mitzvah. So Kamash Malona comes to teach us, once men are already taking it from the mitzvah, Torah's Kli olav, that's considered a Kli. And anyone can move it around, so it's not going to be considered muksa for the woman. And the Gemara continues that the two dots, according to the Mishnah, Katan Hayodeil and Anaya, once a Katan knows how to shake lulav, so he has an obligation to shake lulav. So the Gemara says, Tanu Rabban, and the rabbis taught, Katan Hayodeil and Anaya Chai B'lulav. A Katan who knows how to shake lulav is obligated in lulav. Again, these are all mitzvahs in chinuch midrabanan. Le'sate, if a person knows how to wrap, a child knows how to wrap tzitzis, Chayev v'tzitzis, he's chayev to wear tzitzis. Lishmor tefillin, if a person knows how to protect his tefillin, guard his tefillin properly, so Aviv lokeach lo tefillin, that's when his father purchases from tefillin. Yodeya l'daber, when the child knows how to speak, Aviv lomdo Torah, his father teaches him Torah. Ukriya Shema, teaches him Kriya Shema. Torah Mahi, what does it mean the father teaches him Kriya Shema? Amar Rav Hamnuna says, Torah tzivalana Moshe, Morosh Shekilas Yaakov. You teach him Torah tzivalana Moshe, that the Torah is commanded to us by Moshe. Kriya Shema Mahi, what does it mean that he's taught Kriya Shema? Pasuk Rishon, it means you teach him the first pasuk of Kriya Shema. And Rashi over here says, Chaye B'lulav l'chancho midivreim, as we said, this is a mitzvah of chinuch midrabanan. Lishmor tefillin, what does it mean a katan knows how to protect his tefillin? Shelo yichnos behen lebeis hakisa, he understands that he's not supposed to go in the bathroom with tefillin again, so once he gets to that age, his father can purchase for him tefillin. And the Gemara continues, Hayodea lishmor gufa, once a katan reaches the age where he knows how to protect his body from tumah, so ochlan al gufo taros, a person is allowed to eat taros even if the child touches it, because now this child is old enough, we can assume that the child took care, made sure he wasn't tameh, and therefore you can assume that this food is tahor as well. Lishmor es yadav, once a child is old enough to wash his hands to make sure they're not tamei. Ochlin al yadav taro, same idea. Even if his hands touch the food, you can assume it's considered tahor, it's considered pure for those who are eating the food b'tahara. And the Gemara continues, Hayodea lishoel. Let's say a child reaches an age where you can ask him and say, did you touch something tamei? Did something become tamei? And you can get an accurate answer. So then, Rishus hayachid sfeiko tamei. We follow the regular rules like an adult. In Rishus hayachid, if the child says there's a doubt, we always assume tamei. Rishus harabim, but let's say it's in Rishus harabim, the child said there's a suffix tama, sfeiko tar. The general rule in Rishus harabim is that we say sfeiko tar. And Rashi over here explains, Hayodea lishmor gufo, a child who knows how to protect his body. Mitumas mago, masa v'yol, he's careful from touching tuma, carrying tuma, he's careful from tumas oel. Ochlan agufo taros, so if his body touches the food, we can assume it's pure. If naga gufo betaros ain't choshen lem, if his body touches food that we're keeping pure, we're not afraid that now it's tamei. Avalo al yadav, but in such a case, we're not necessarily with his hands. We don't necessarily say it's permitted. If naga biyada betaros choshen lem, if his hands would touch taros, we would be afraid. Sheyesh yodea lishmar gufo vein yodea lishmar yadav. Happens to be there are people who can protect their body, but they're not able to protect their hands. Mitorah stam yodayim, because there's dinim called stam yodayim. We assume hands touch things and they're tamei. Shagazru aleim lios shnios. There's a halacha that hands, they're considered shnios, they're considered secondary tumah, elim ken yodea l'shomrim, unless the person is really watching them. Aval yodea l'shmoras yadav, the rule generally is somebody who's old enough to watch his hands, mishenotlam eino nogeya b'shum dvar safik, once he washes netilas yadayim, he doesn't touch anything that's a safik, or b'safik hamatame yadayim, he doesn't touch anything that's a safik that might be b'tamei, b'imlo nizar u'baliga b'taros notel yadav, and he's the kind of person, if he's not careful, he touches, so then he wants to touch the haros, he'll always wash his hands. So in other words, the point is, the hands is a higher level of protection. So even if you have a child who can wash his body from tumah, that doesn't necessarily mean that we trust him with his hands. Once he reaches the age where he can protect his hands, ochlan al yadav taharos shenagu yadav bahem. Then already, even if his hands touch taharos, we can assume that remained tar. Vayodei lishoel, somebody who's old enough that if you ask him, meaning shem shoelin or so, nagata b'tumah, you ask him, did you touch tumah? Zu yodea l'hashiv heino lav. He knows how to answer yes or no. O any yodea, or he can answer any yodea. So such a child in Rishus Harabim im shalu, if they ask him in Rishus Harabim, v'yamar any yodea, he says he doesn't know, then we say sveiko tar. Then we say tar. Rishus hayachid sveiko tamei. Rishus hayachid we say tamei hachi gemir lo hilchas misota. This is the general halacha by all adults. That's going to be true by the child as well. So again, if he's old enough that you can ask him and he can give you an accurate answer, we follow the general rules. And again, the Gemara now continues. Hayodea lifros kapov. Let's say a person is old enough, child is old enough, he knows how to spread out his hands to do the duchening, the birchas kohanim. So then cholken lo truma bebeis hagranos. Once he's able to do that, we're going to give him the truma straight from the granary. As Rashi over here says, Hayodea lifros kapov kishu kohen. We're talking about a child that's a kohen, he knows how to duchen. Cholken lo truma bebeis hagranos. Even in the granary, we give him truma. Umekame hachi ein cholken lo begoren. Now, if before he's able to duchen, we don't give him it at the granary, but we will give him truma at his house. We'll send it there in such a situation that we will do. And the idea over here is, as Rashi explains, we don't give it in the Beis Hagranos because that's already bizayin. Because people don't realize that he's old enough and mature enough to protect the truma. But we will send it to their house if we know them, we understand that they're able to. But once a child is old enough that he knows how to duchen, he's doing that publicly, so hakol yodem, then at that point everyone knows that he already has two hairs, he's not really a katan, she'ein katan poris kapav, a katan never duchens. Can I read him in Megillah, like we say in Megillah, hilga chokin. So in other words, the point in this particular case is, once he's able to duchen, it's an assumption that he's an adult, and therefore you're allowed to treat him like an adult, and you can give him truma, even the Beis Hagranos, you don't have to send it to his house. We'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Mem Beis Amud Beis.